Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Late Winner Show. We continue our Champions League previews, which start in the next couple of days. I have Adam from the Hopeless Wanderer podcast and Jeremy McGann from the Ligue Farmers FC podcast. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. And yeah, really doing quite well. So thank you for having me on.
Thanks for having me on, 𝗲𝗏𝗧𝗪. Doing good. Morning time here in Australia.
Morning time, yes. Just before we start, do you guys mind introducing a little bit about yourselves and your podcast as well?
Sure. So I'll start off. Nice to meet you. I'm Adam from the Hopeless Wanderer podcast. So our podcast really covers a lot of the European leagues as well as the Premier League. We are specialists, I suppose, in the Bundesliga as well as Serie A. And we take a lot of the hot topics, but also try and get as many guests on our pods, just really talking about the key things that matter to football fans. So yeah, that's a brief summary of us. But yeah, feel free to check us out also on our social media platforms as well. So on Twitter @HopelessPod and on Instagram @the Hopeless Wanderer podcast.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well, both of you. Adam, Richard, obviously we've spoken in the past. Jeremy, I'm French. I have a Ligue 1 podcast in English one. There's a couple going on, but I feel like none of them were I guess happy to talk about every single team and not only the 2-3 top teams. So I'm loving doing this on my pod, and I'm making sure everyone gets a bit of love, and I'm trying to get fans on to try and talk about their team. Of course, there's a bit of talk around Ligue 1 this season, even more than usual. So it's exciting times for us. And when I don't talk rubbish about French football on my pod, I try and write about every other football from the US, from Australia, or even from France in diverse publications.
Great. Let's get started with the Group G preview for the Champions League. Arguably, probably the closest assembly in this year's UCL campaign. In Group G, Lille, Wolfsburg, Sevilla, and RB Salzburg have pretty much the same prospects. To basically advance to the knockout stages of the Champions League. I feel like, I don't know if you guys agree, but I feel like Sevilla is probably the favorite to go top of the group, and anybody between Lille, Wolfsburg, or Salzburg can actually nick that second position. It's really close to call for me. Let's start with the French champions, Lille, who were in the part one as well. Obviously, French champions are one of the rare teams that managed to outsmart PSG last season. They won the Ligue 1 last year, and that's why they were in the part one. They do have a few sounding names like Jose Font, Turkish veteran Burak Yilmaz. But the true power is definitely lying in the talent and youngsters that they have in the team. In the name of Jonathan Ikone, Jonathan David, 𝗕𝗲𝗏𝗧𝗪. I think one more I'm forgetting. Zeki,
Renato Sanchez.
Yeah, and I guess 𝗕𝗲𝗏𝗫𝗏. That's correct.
Yep,
the correct pronunciation. All these young guys bring really, really good energy in the field. Veterans obviously are orchestrating everything, but they will slowly change how Lille play. Justin Governac, the head coach, has found the perfect rhythm for his boys. Obviously, they've not really had a really good start to the campaign this season. But what are we making of Lille? Not talking about their Ligue 1 campaign or anything, but what can we expect from them in the Champions League? Jeremy.
It's a wounded beast right now, to be honest. When Lille won the league last year, I was expecting them to actually do well this season, because we knew that they might lose a few players. Mike Maignan was gone the night after they won the title, and so was Boubacar Soumaré. But we expected them to have some sort of continuity and to be able to give a good show of themselves in Champions League. To be honest, back in France, all those hopes are gone right now. The beginning of the season has been a little bit shambolic. It's a team that last year recorded 21 clean sheets and was the best defense in Ligue 1 this season. In 5 games, they've already conceded 11 goals, which is the most any Ligue 1 champion has conceded in 5 games since the 1960s. So there's a bit of a fear that they're going to make a fool of themselves, because I think the title hangover is definitely there. the squad hasn't changed much. You lost Mike Maignan and you lost Boubakary Soumaré, and that's it. The rest of the team is the exact same. And you've added Amadou Onana, who was in Hamburg last year, to try and replace Soumaré. But Soumaré wasn't in the starting lineup the whole season. It was mainly 𝗕𝗃 and Benjamin André who are still there. And Soumaré played mostly the end of the season. So the talent is the same. 𝗕𝗃𝗓𝗏 is still here. You mentioned José Font, who's still here. Jonathan David up front. So they have the same firepower. They have the same sort of spine. They struggle with the keeper. Now they got 𝗂𝗲𝗪 from Atletico Madrid on loan, who's a great goalkeeper. And this morning I woke up at 5 a.m. to be able to watch Lille against Lorient. And even though Lorient surprisingly won 2-1 against the champion, 𝗂𝗪𝗪 was one of the players that was a standout. So he's a very good goalkeeper. I think Lille just need to find their groove, need to find somehow what they had last year, which is a team spirit, a mindset of fighting for each other, playing for each other. You all look a little bit disjointed, we spoke before the season, ऋषभ, and I was saying that I thought 𝗕𝗲𝗓𝗕 maybe wasn't the right guy, but also was the kind of coach that would come and not ruffle any feather and just keep on doing what 𝗕𝗃𝗓𝗏 was doing. But we've seen some scenes that are worrying. I think the main loss in the Lille team is Christophe Galtier. And since he's joined Nice has been successful. He was a very charismatic coach, and that group of Lille that looked like it was only nice guys playing for each other. You realize that maybe they seemed that way because there was a very charismatic coach leading them, which now you don't have. Something that's worrying, and that happened only a couple hours ago during that game, is there's a scene that unfortunately was caught live, which is 𝗕𝗏𝗓𝗏 replacing his leader on the field, Benjamin André, and Benjamin André looking at him and saying, "Stop talking to me," which is the last thing you want to see on a football pitch from a captain to their coach. So there's dirty laundry to be aired. There's difficult conversation to be had in that locker room, I think. And if this is done, and if this is done properly, then we might see some results. At this stage in France, we are scared that Lille is going to be forcing the group out of the European competitions, which is sad because it's also a bit of a pattern for Lille. Only once have they gone out of the group stage they went to Champions League 7 times. Only once they were able to get out of the group stage. So they don't usually succeed in Champions League. This year look like the right year. They're in the pot 1. They have a group that, like you said, everybody can get out of. It looks like they're not in form for it. Their only luck, in my opinion, is that this season the Champions League isn't played every single week. It's played every 2 weeks, and there's not one. It's not going to be one time where they're going to have 6 games in 3 weeks. It's going to be 3 games and then a break, and 3 games and then a break. So they have time to recover. They have time to adjust. They have time to find their groove. They have time to change coach if things don't go well in the next 2-3 weeks, and still they'll be able to finish the group stage in a better form. So that's what I'm hoping for them, that they get rid of the hangover of being champion, that whether it's an ego issue or just a lack of effort because they thought they made it, that all this goes away and then they go back to what they're supposed to do, which is playing great football, defending together. And men, they were great last season, and you could see that they were unstoppable. This season, they're scary, they're fragile.
You subtly, just pointed out that, Christophe Galtier should come back to Lille, right?
Well, he won't, because now him and the president had some funny words on media, because Christophe Galtier, the day after they win the league, said live on one of the most famous French radio that it was great. He was champion. His cycle was over, and he wanted to leave. And it took 1 month for 1 month and a half even for the transaction to go through, because the president of Lille was like, he's our most important player, kind of thing. So when you want to get a player from a club that still has a contract, you have to pay for it. You're going to have to pay for my coach. And so he ended up being a little bit of bad words in media once it was in Nice. So 𝗕𝗲𝗧 is definitely not coming back. And unfortunately for Lille, when they met him early this season, Nice won 4-0 in Lille with 𝗕𝗲𝗧 on the Nice bench. So a cruel reminder for all the Lille fans that had lost their maestro there.
Yeah, definitely. I was just pushing a needle there, but like, I don't really think that he's going to come back. I think the way he started in Nice, I definitely don't see him coming back to Lille there. Let's move on to the other team, which is probably, according to me, the favorites to win the group, Sevilla. I think definitely, again, as I said, they're the biggest favorites to win, to advance to the next stage. If they have a little luck, 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗲𝗃 can actually, could attack the La Liga at the same time, because obviously we know how Barca and how shaken Barca and Real Madrid are at the moment. They've added a few solid players during the summer as well: Rafa Mir, Thomas Delaney, Ludwig Augustinsson, and then Gonzalo Montiel. All of them are role players, to be very honest, and then they know and what 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗃 is probably planned for them. They will do what has been told to them to do. Really, this really says a lot about Sevilla, who's probably, I feel like, who's one of the really good tactical teams in the competition. They might not have the talent of some other sides in the Champions League, but are really, really good when they want to, when they have a suitable solution for each rival. You see that they don't have a lot of goals in them as well, even though but their efficiency is like really, really good. They get the 2 or 3 chances that they get in the game, and they are really, really ruthless in that. So that being said, do you guys agree, group stage winners for all of us in the name of Sevilla, or do we think, or are we thinking otherwise?
Yeah, no, from my point of view, definitely Sevilla are the favourites in this group. I think the quality that they have over the other teams is just slightly over the other opponents in this respect. And I think 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗲𝗃 has a lot to prove in Spain, not just around Europe, because his, I suppose, career was damaged at Real Madrid to an extent. So he is slowly rebuilding that with Sevilla, and I think that's a good fit for him, because Sevilla have this tradition under Unai Emery of being kind of that dogged kind of side, but what they do is they play attractive football. So just a stat for you guys, I mean, Sevilla have got the second most successive possession stats in Europe right now, behind Man City right in this current form. But the main thing that I would say is about the quality of players that they have assembled, especially during the summer. So offline, we talked about Rakitic and how he's going to be critical for that side. But they also added some quality players in the January window, which was in the sense of Papu Gomez from Atalanta. Now, that obviously for Atalanta fans goes down quite sour, because there's been that disagreement between Papu Gomez and the club. But he's a fantastic signing for Sevilla, and I think he was the impetus for Sevilla to secure that top 4 finish in the end. I mean, it's a shame, because when you look at the form that Sevilla had going into that kind of last 10 games, I think if they had an extra 5, I'm sure you would have seen them in the mix for being potentially even La Liga winners, because they were in that touching distance as well. But one of the things that they have done quite cleverly is they've moved on Bryan Gil to Spurs. Interestingly, I mean, he didn't spend that season at Sevilla, so it's going to be interesting to see how he develops at Spurs. But in return, they've got Eric Lamela, who I thought was a fantastic player at Spurs, even though his injury kind of record isn't great. But he started off quite well for Sevilla. He's their top goal scorer right now. And he's kind of probably the right mentality in terms of a player that can take the game to opponents. He adds that little bit of quality. And as you rightly called out, there is that lack of goals up top. So they've got Vicente, who was their top goal scorer last season with 16 goals. But this season hasn't really kicked on. So 2 games in, no goals. He started off mainly off the bench. So it'd be interesting from that point of view what they can do. I think obviously the other player to kind of call out here is Youssef El-Nesyri as well, who I think is going to be a handful for a lot of teams. But it is going to be a question of how can they kind of do it week in, week out, because they haven't had that kind of consistency before for a while where they've been Europe and then La Liga. I think obviously 𝗕𝗲𝗹𝗪 might target La Liga over European success this season, but it all depends on the luck of the draw ultimately. And I suppose they've got a good chance to put themselves into, say, the last 16, I think. But yeah, from then on, it all depends on who gets paired up with them as well. So that's my thoughts on Sevilla anyway.
Exactly. I think that's really well put, because I was really disappointed even last season when they were drawn up against Dortmund, and I really felt that Dortmund versus Sevilla was going to be Sevilla who's going to be in the quarterfinals, but it didn't happen. I really felt, this is not the place to talk about Dortmund, but I really don't really have high expectations from Dortmund, just because they're just a bunch of kids who play for fun and they don't really know that they want to actually win something. So that's my problem with Dortmund. But that's okay. I think I can cover Dortmund in the other Champions League preview when I do it. Talking about the other Bundesliga team, Wolfsburg, who are topping the Bundesliga at the moment, but only 3 games played, so that's fine. But there's still it's a very good picture for their fans. Throughout the previous season, they were 3rd in the standings for a long time. That basically sees that they have a lot of quality, and they can present a lot of tough challenge for any opponent. I think in the 34 matches that they played last season, they scored 98 goals combined, and it doesn't matter they play home or away. I think they netted 32 goals in front of their own crowd and 29 goals in away from home. One of the strikers, I think I remember when De Bruyne was there at Wolfsburg, and they were playing in the Champions League. I think Weghorst was the one that was still there at that time. I don't remember exactly, but he was still there. That's probably their main man up top for Wolfsburg this season as well. I think, and the 23-year-old 𝗕𝗲𝗪, who promises to become the leader in the midfield. I've really been impressed. I think I haven't followed them a lot last season, but when I got to know that they were in the Champions League this season, I kind of followed their preseason and the first 3 games that they've played in the Bundesliga. I've been really impressed with them. How do you feel, Adam, about them, and what can we expect from them in the Champions League?
Yeah, well, Wolfsburg are a different side this season compared to last season, mainly due to the fact that they've got a new manager. So Mark van Bommel, that blast from the past, he's going to be very interesting, because a lot of people were saying, where did this signing come from? Because obviously he's been out of the game. His last kind of foray was with PSV. And obviously, I don't know what people's thoughts are in terms of his kind of personality, but we all know him for being that tough tackling midfielder. But I think everyone's been pleasantly taken aback by how they've been progressing in the Bundesliga. I don't expect them to be top come, say, December. I think you'll see a different side being top of that league, potentially Bayern Munich. But we'll talk about Wolfsburg now for a second. But this is the thing with Wolfsburg. What you can see from their play is very defensive minded, very more counter-attacking style. And I think that might suit certain players. So we're talking about Baku. I think he's had a fantastic start so far. The question is, have they got enough goals in them? So far, despite the fact that they've got this unbeaten record in the Bundesliga, they've only scored 5 goals. They've conceded 1, which, and the 1 goal they did concede was to bottom side Hertha Berlin. Now, yeah, you could say that's a bit disappointing to concede against Hertha Berlin, especially when you look at how Hertha Berlin play. But the one thing you can say about Wolfsburg is there seems to be that determination right now. Interestingly, though, don't ask Mark van Bommel to follow any rules, because recently in the 𝗕𝗲𝗪 Cup, he accidentally put on 6 substitutions when he was only allowed 5, and they got kicked out of the cup. So, yeah, this will be interesting to see what Wolfsburg do. For me, it's a question of how can they manage that expectation going into it, because I think definitely if they bring their game to this group, I think they could easily finish second. They could even push for first if they want to, but I just feel they're a bit lacking in quality. I think Sevilla just edge it in this group personally. So yeah, I think Wolfsburg will do well to finish second in my head anyway.
to jump in on Wolfsburg, and I agree with you, Adam, that they're a good side, but maybe not as good as Sevilla. I just want to highlight one player, maybe because it's my bread and butter, but also because it's been impressive last season. I think we're going to be impressed by 𝗕𝗲𝗓𝗂 in Champions League. He's been a terrific centre back. Last year, he comes from Sochaux. So basically almost unknown in Ligue 2 when he's being recruited by Wolfsburg, and a bit of a unusual path, I guess. He was a goalkeeper, he was a striker, he was an offensive midfielder, defensive midfielder, and now with a centre back. But you actually see all that when he plays. He's obviously very strong defensively, but his ability to get the ball out, the calm and the cold blood, as we say in France, he has when he gets the ball in the middle of the box, and his ability to make the right choice, I think has been impressive in last season in Bundesliga. And they, the fact that Van Bommel wants to play a defensive football with the ability to get out quickly, a guy like Maxence Lacroix seems like he's going to be instrumental in that. And I think the player like him, Jérôme Roussillon, is there, of course, Mbabu, and his pace on the right wing as well, will I think maybe allow Wolfsburg to be a bit of a surprise, to be able to play low, to wait for teams to arrive, and especially against Sevilla, to defend and to try and win in counter-attack, and then just to get back to parking the bus and staying behind. Interestingly enough, I think they'll be a bit more in trouble against Lille or against Salzburg, because then they have the favorite status, and then they might forget that they should defend. But against Sevilla, I wouldn't be surprised to see Wolfsburg actually performing well.
Awesome, that's great. Yeah, we know that there is another team in the name of Red Bull Salzburg in the group. Not a lot of people who follow probably the Austrian Bundesliga, but they are the Austrian powerhouse, and that they their fans go wild because of its because of its results that they keep on from. I think 2 years ago when they played against Liverpool, like that crazy game when they came back from 3-0 down to 3-3, right? And then 1 week they'll defeat. I think they defeated Barcelona in the friendly game in the preseason friendly for this season. And then the next time they said they netted 5 times in the domestic league as well. But the next day that they're just mediocre. So it kind of comes here and there for Salzburg. But they've eliminated Brøndby in the playoffs without any particular trouble, showing that they still have really, really good quality. They have a lot of young players in their squad, guaranteeing they might be consistent throughout the entire season. In the Austrian Bundesliga, they have also a lot of teenagers that are waiting to explode. I think Karim Adeyemi, Benjamin Sisko, and the American Aronson, I don't remember the name.
Yeah.
Brendan Aronson. Yes. I feel like those are one of the players. Just make sure that you remember their names, because these are good young players who are going to explode, and they're going to move away from the Austrian Bundesliga and probably going to play in one of the top 5 leagues. Probably just go to their parent club, which is RB Leipzig. What are we thinking in terms of Salzburg's expectations in this group? For myself, I'm really high on them just because of the way they play. Very good attacking football, but again, as I said, they can be inconsistent in some of the games. Just given how Lille are, just given how the other team I'm forgetting. Sorry.
Wolfsburg, yeah.
Sorry, Wolfsburg and Sevilla. They have an equal chance. Just say that they have an equal chance to go through the round of 16. Through the round of 16 as well.
No, definitely. I think the big thing is what you've just said, which is the age aspect. So when I was looking at it, the oldest player they've got within their ranks is 24 years old. So that goes to show you the philosophy of Red Bull is around grooming these youngsters. It sounds really bad saying grooming, but yeah, it's about trying to develop these players, shall we say. But as you rightly called out, Adeyemi is the prime kind of target player that it sounds like clubs like Liverpool, Bayern Munich and Barcelona were after in the summer. Adeyemi, ironically, could have started off at Bayern Munich when he was a youngster. So there seemed to be some issues with his contract, which meant he had to sign for a lower German side, which then subsequently Salzburg saw the opportunity and snapped him up as a youngster. So obviously high hopes for him, being his age, only 19. He hasn't had the most prolific of scoring records just yet. He was loaned out to their sister club and scored 15 goals in 35 appearances. And for Salzburg, it's only 14 in 45 appearances. So obviously, time is still on his side. He can develop. He's not, I suppose, the Haaland-esque kind of player that we may be anticipating here. But certainly in Germany, there's a lot being said about him. Two other players, though, I would call out that you haven't mentioned. One is 𝗕𝗲𝗓𝗓, who has been brought in from Boca Juniors. Obviously, interesting player. Not expected to score goals, but yeah, certainly he's got age on his side to develop into a very interesting midfielder. What I would compare him to is potentially like a Sebastian Veron-like figure. He controls that midfield. And then something that's a bit left field, 𝗕𝗲𝗓𝗓𝗏 being bought in from Rakov Częstochowa, which is going to blow everyone's minds because they're thinking, what club is this? But this is a Polish club. So Rakov Częstochowa had an amazing season last season, beating the Polish champions Legia Warsaw in the Super Cup. They qualified for this season's Europa Conference League as well. And what's interesting is the teams they faced. So obviously to get into this stage is they had to qualify, so pre-qualifies, and then they faced the likes of Genk, for example, and they beat them over 2 legs. So this shouldn't be a side that should be underestimated. But the big thing about 𝗕𝗏𝗏 is he's young again, so something typical of that kind of model at Red Bull Salzburg, and he's got a maturity about him. So, I can see him definitely going to the big clubs if he gets his game time. Big question whether he will get that this season. But there is high hopes in Poland about him as a potential, centre back in the future. And I think, what you're seeing with youngsters, I mean, France are blessed with so many centre backs right now. They could fill every team in Europe right now. But yeah, there is some really talented players in that Salzburg side. So I think the main thing is to say about Salzburg, very young, very hungry, but will that inexperience cost them ultimately? And I think it was shown in that Liverpool results where, for example, could that maturity when they were leading at points, could that have been the difference if they had a more mature player that would just say, take it in, breathe it in, control the game, pass it, don't swing at balls. They're the little things that as a footballer, as you mature and you get better in terms of your decision making, that's the key decision making, especially on a big stage like the Champions League. So big opportunity for Salzburg, though, because I think if you look at the group, I think they can really win a few of these matches. I don't think they should be scared. It's just a question of, where do they make it count? Do they make it count at the home games, or do they have to gamble and take it abroad as well? So I'll get you guys to debate that. But certainly for me, I think they've got to go for the home record personally and try and nab a few draws away.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, all you said, I agree with most of it. Basically, with Red Bull Salzburg, it is a young squad, and it is a team that will need to get those wins at home. I think one parameter is very important, and it's a subject that has been aborted with when we talked about in France, Paris Saint-Germain not winning the Champions League. Is I think the main issue for Salzburg is the level of teams they're facing in the Champions League is so far away from what they're facing in the domestic league. Like we said, they're winning the Australia League year in, year out, almost every year. But they're also dominating right now, like since their new coach came in, which we always worried about a change of coach. Losing a guy like Jesse March should have been a big deal, and they got in the German one. The name's gonna come back. Let me read it. Matthias
Jesse, yeah.
So when they got him in, who was just coaching only a second division team before that, you're wondering what's going to happen. The next thing you know, he's in a 9-win in 9 games. So maybe it's a credit to the work that he's doing at Red Bull Salzburg and how good the team is, but it's also maybe an indication of the level that is in the Australia League. So now when you're going to have to get out of that comfort zone of those games that you're winning week in, week out, and you have to travel to Spain or to Germany to play a team that is supposedly better, I think that's what's going to be very interesting to see if they are able to raise their level up to these kind of games. Because, going from smashing everybody on the weekend to a game that you're very excited about, and the nervous influx and the emotional management of those games on the weekdays will be, I think, a key point for Salzburg. And not having 𝗕𝗲𝗪 anymore, not having 𝗕𝗲𝗪 anymore on the bench, I think adds even more to that youth aspect that you were discussing, Adam, that is going to be a bit hard to negotiate, I think, for Salzburg.
Yeah, and they lost 𝗕𝗲𝗪 from to Leicester as well this season.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was again a bigger. Again, with these teams, I feel like the problem is that you actually depend on the manager rather than actually the players, because the players will obviously be they'll sign either they will be from the academy, or they will actually sign them up from the lower leagues, and then for a very minute fee. And then the players are just like young, 18, 19 years, and they just want to express themselves. But that's where, like as you mentioned, against the 3-3 draw with Liverpool, that's where that composure should have come. But you don't expect that from an 18, 19-year-old kid to bring that composure onto the pitch. I think that's where the managers step in and actually dictate the game in that sense. But you don't get too many good managers in those leagues as well. So that's a sad point. And obviously, like once you have that one wonder season in the Champions League or that specific player, a club like Liverpool, Dortmund just are waiting for signing them. So that's what happens. Like I think Salzburg had like Minamino and Haaland and Daka and Mane. So those players are like all from Salzburg. Like, so they have been producing really, really good talent. It's just that once they explode, they move on to their their next big chapter that they definitely deserve. I'm not taking anything away from them. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think this is the thing with Salzburg. I think what Jeremy made a point about the league is definitely kind of reminiscent about Scotland as well, where you've got Celtic and Rangers, because from our co-host Craig, he talks about it's very difficult to go on a European campaign and then play a club like, for example, Ross County, for example, in Scotland. And that's the kind of level that Salzburg face, is that they don't have that competitive kind of edge in the Austrian league. I know of many big clubs in that, obviously, league. So you're talking about Rapid Vienna, Sturm Graz, these big giants that used to turn up at these kind of stages, but they're not the side they used to be now. It's going to be a question of how do you kind of put a lot of pressure on these youngsters to kind of perform. And the other thing that they've got on the backs is if they don't perform, there's another youngster just behind them that will take their place. So that's a huge pressure on these group of players. So I can imagine that's very tough. I mean, granted, there's no personalities, and I don't think there is a lot of personalities because they do a lot of research about their temperaments and stuff like that. But for a player going into that environment, you're like, this is a huge opportunity, but if I screw up here, then someone else is going to have my shirt. So that's huge. And if you don't live to expectation, I suspect you're just diminished, and you kind of that can really demoralize a player quite quickly. So Salzburg is like that poison chalice. It almost feels like you don't want to go to that club, because if you don't succeed, your career might be in tatters. But that's really harsh, isn't it, when you're talking about a club like Salzburg? But that's the Red Bull mentality.
Yeah. Just let's quickly get your predictions in for this group. So what are we thinking? 1, 2, 3, 4. So
for me, definitely number 1, it's got to be Sevilla. Number 2, I will go with Wolfsburg. Number 3, I think I'm going to go with Lille. Only just, and I'll go on the basis of they've got Sven Botman in the back. That's the only reason why I think and there was a lot of rumors about him potentially moving in the last window. And I think the fact that they've managed to keep hold of him You know, we talked about the experienced kind of heads that they need. I think, yeah, Yilmaz will just be enough quality with 𝗕𝗏𝗪𝗏 up front that could be just enough to kind of keep them into that third place. Feel sorry because I don't think there's a lot between Salzburg and Lille. But then again, it just depends if Lille decide to turn up. That's for me.
Yeah, I think at this stage I'll be hypercritical of the French squad, and I'll do Sevilla, Wolfsburg, Salzburg, and Lille, because if it's what's happening right now in Lille, that will be the result. They're not going to be able to get more than a couple of points. You know, me saying that is also me having that wishful thinking that that's not going to happen, that they are going to turn up, because if they turn up, I can see them finish second easily if they play the way we know them to play. Unfortunately, we haven't seen it in the first 5 games of Ligue 1. So it's a scary thought for all the Lille fans and all the Ligue 1 followers. But we're unfortunately bracing for impact and thinking that they'll end up bottom of the group. And then Portugal is going to stay above France in the UEFA ranks out of the top 5.
I'm gonna make a bold prediction here. I'm gonna say Wolfsburg probably first for me, Sevilla second, Salzburg third, Lille fourth. Sorry, Jeremy, but yeah, Lille's probably gonna be fourth.
Hopefully that'll surprise us.
Yeah. So that does it for the Group G preview of the Champions League. I again thank Adam from the Hopeless Wanderer podcast and Jeremy McGann from the Ligue 1 Farmers podcast. Farmers podcast, not formers. Farmers podcast. So yeah, and thank you so much for joining. And as you can see, we covered a little bit of the Austrian Bundesliga as well. We discussed about 10 minutes on Salzburg. So that's what you can expect on the Late Winner Show as well. Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Go follow us on Instagram and Twitter for any more news, highlights, any transfer news, anything that is related to football. Go check it out there. We're also doing our Late Winner FPL show. We are live on the Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at around 10:30 p.m. PST. So do join us for that as well. And that's about it, I think. Yeah, thank you so much, Adam and Jeremy. I guess I had a blast talking about this Group G. I hope it delivers, and some of our predictions are probably right. So we'll tweet ourselves. Let's see. Let's have some fun on Twitter.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
No,
thanks,
thank
Adam.
you. Thank you
All
too.
right.
Take care.
Good night. Thanks. Good
Bye.
night.